Record. There we go. Ed, good to see you.
Hey,
It's been like
thank you.
it's been like a full week.
Yes.
So we are going to talk today as part of our summer speaker series, where we're here to help you, our speaker friends, make a bit of money by learning how to go deep into associations and get some paid speaking engagements. I came to the revelation earlier this week that, Happy New Year. We're already thinking about 2027 because, there's not a lot of time left in 2026 to book something. So this is where you need to start thinking about your next calendar year. And we're going to get started today by talking about going deep and diversifying. So, Ed, maybe you can kick us off, and if I can get a word in edgeways, that'll be nice. But we'll
See how
see.
it goes. Yeah. Well, I would take it just a teeny bit different than what you said. I'd call it specialize deeply, diversify strategically. And one of our friends, Mike Staver, I was communicating with him on email the other day. And interestingly enough, I've known that he's always been heavily focused on real estate. And for quite a bit of time, I knew that he had done funeral homes. And so I'd send him a note and said, well, you know, are you still doing that? And he says, no, the funeral home industry kind of it went its course, and it didn't have the legs that I wanted. So in addition to real estate, Mike said, being 80% of his business. Okay, as a speaker, 80% of his business, but so he's gone deeply into real estate, but he's also diversified strategically. So he had a second market that just wasn't doing what he wanted. So he was very strategic about, okay, what other markets are related? And he went into healthcare and also one other. But I think the point, and like I was emailing with Naomi Rhodey the other day, and she and Jim, just their whole career specialized in dentistry,
Dentist, yeah.
and just down one lane. And I asked her what she's up to now, and they were doing cruises where people come on the cruises with them. So even though they retired and they sold their business, they're still, and Jim's in his 90s, they're still
Jim's in his
serving.
90s?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah, they're
Okay.
they're they're still serving that market. So I think the kind of the interesting thing to think about is not suggesting a speaker has to pick distribution and stay there their whole life, but pick one, two, three, maybe four industries and go specialize deeply in those industries, but be strategic about your diversification. You know, look at the other industries. Is there a relationship, or is there a reason that they resonate very much with your material? And I think what tends to happen, and you probably see this even more than me, because you're nice and you give all the ASSC people a 30-minute time slot with you, which I don't. Um, but looking at, how do you see people struggling with, and when you're talking with them on these 30-minute calls, you know, which industry to go down and which industries, plural, to choose? I mean, what have you been seeing? What have been
So,
some of the struggles that the speakers have been sharing with you?
well, the struggles are, a lot of it goes down to the fundamentals. They don't know their positioning down flat. Like they just don't have their positioning. And I always and I tell everyone, if you don't have your positioning down, or sorry, once you have your positioning locked, everything else is easy because you know the programs you're developing, you know who you're developing for, you know what the return is. That's easy. Then it becomes prospecting, and that's defining your industries. Now, the way I've been encouraging people to do it is to use our tool or any tool that'll help you with your positioning. Our tool is obviously better. So use the tool in the ASSC site. do a deep dive into your positioning and get a really tight positioning statement. It's going to take you 10, 15 minutes. It's not a lot of fun, but guess what? This is work. It's not play. It's not a hobby. It's work. So what you want to do is make sure that you have your positioning. You use your positioning along with your topic to create your programs. Then what I do is I tell them to put their positioning statement, their programs, their website into ChatGPT and let ChatGPT do the research and say what industries are going to be most likely to buy these products, which are my programs. My programs are my products. Explain why. So it's not just, you don't want it just a list of industries. It's like, I want to get them ranked in order of priority and why they're a good fit. And if ChatGPT is looking at my bio and it's looking at my programs and it's looking at my positioning statement, it's looking at my website, it's kind of got a nice overview of what I do and who I am. And once it has that, it's easy for it to say, you know what, this specific program, it goes well with financial services or goes well with distribution. These are the three industries you should be going after. And I found that when I'm working with speakers and they have that, just that little additional, these are the industries, that opens everything up, makes it even that much easier because now everything you do is aligned with the prospects you're going after. And when people have that revelation, their business is better because they're not
What I've
struggling.
what I found, Aiden, I found there's a lot of people that have come into the speaking business that for whatever reason jettisoned their history. So, I mean, let's just say, and I'm thinking of a particular speaker now, that she has a topic way over here, and it has nothing to do with her background way over here. Her background way over here was sales and technology. Her topic over here was something much more metaphysical. And so I it seems to me, and this is something um, that I muse over, people will come in and want to become a professional speaker, a keynoter, and they want to do something different, be different than who they are, what their background is.
I was going to say,
You know, and they lean into their background. They know the industry, they know the people, they know the problems. And it's like, why are you walking away from that gold, which is, maybe you spent 10 years in X industry or Y industry? Well, you learned a lot in that 10 years and you can help people in that industry. And why are you walking away from it? So when speakers are looking at what industries do they want, what rabbit hole do they want to go down? I try to tell them, where have you come from?
where's the credibility? I tell this story. I met a speaker at Influence. It was in a basement in Washington, whatever the last Washington one was.
When it was 2015.
Yeah, so Washington, and a guy came up to me. He goes, I've just wrapped up. I've been working 30 years in construction in New York City and building high rises. It's like fantastic. What do you speak about? Well, I've got experience in like, uh, you know, managing projects, and that's like, wow, so I can see your positioning being, most buildings, construction projects are they go over budget, over time. They're failed projects by the definition of a failed project. So and that can cost companies hundreds of millions of dollars on a huge building. So you can help solve for that and basically name your price in construction because you know these problems and you know how to solve them. And he came back to me. He's like, I hate construction. The reason I quit was because I didn't want to be in construction anymore. And I had to explain to him, you're not in construction anymore. You are a professional speaker who serves the construction industry. So I think a lot of us, when we transition to a new role as a speaker from whatever expertise we have and where we have that credibility, we want to throw everything away. But really, you can shed the skin of your previous position and keep the
Yeah,
core and use that in different ways. So
yeah,
he is now shed the skin. You're not in construction, but you've got the core knowledge that you're now a butterfly who can spread. Well, listen, I'm stretching the analogy too far, but you're that's what he needs to do. That's what we should all do. That's the low hanging fruit. If you're not doing that, you're making your job a lot harder than it has to be because you're starting from zero somewhere else and you have to build authority. And, go check the last couple of videos we did. We talk a lot about authority. And if you have to
yes.
establish authority in an industry, it's going to take you a while. So if you've already got the authority, leverage that and have that pay your bills while you're building your authority in whatever other industries you want to go into. There's my rant.
No, no, no. I'm right in there with you. And the interesting thing when using this example of this gentleman that came from construction, okay, so he construction could be an industry for him. But also logistics could be an industry.
Yeah.
If he's working so many projects, I mean, project management is a whole skill that the engineering schools are teaching in construction. And so taking and what I'm trying to say is when we tell somebody to specialize deeply and diversify strategically, it's like, okay, what are the next door or the sister organizations or industries that still relate that people can understand? Oh, yeah, if you came from construction and you did high rises, yes, you understand working with unions. Yes, you understand logistics. Yes, you understand project management, and all of these things and what industries that are tangential to that construction industry. And I think a lot of people don't think about that. They just all of a sudden, and this was when we talked earlier before we came on, the S storm that I created this week in the CSP forum by making the statement that so many CSPs really are gig chasers. And I'd like to talk to the people that aren't gig chasers that specialize in an industry. And I got half a dozen people respond
Yeah.
back to me and explain to me their industries and what they do and how they specialize. And I got exactly what I wanted. But the interesting thing is, that was a half a dozen people out of how many CSPs out there. So my statement was probably right. Most CSPs are gig chasers,
Well,
although it ticked them off because they didn't want to admit it and they saw that as being demeaning, but it was true.
Well, it's absolutely true, and I think I shared this at the ASSC call last week. Like I spoke to an awful lot of CSPs at Influence, and a lot of CSPs at Influence are struggling because they're gig chasers. And you've talked before about how difficult it is and how exhausting it is to be a gig chaser versus building authority. And if you're building the authority in one industry and then you're kind of doing the concentric circles out to related industries,
Yeah.
that is a much easier row to hoe than to like just look for random gigs and see if you can land these random gigs. Because you're the authority from one will bleed to the next if they're related industries, and that's important.
I think a lot of speakers confuse diversification with being a generalist.
Mm,
So, I mean, if you diversify strategically, it's like, okay, I'm going to have these four markets because if one market is soft this year, the other three could be strong. And that's very, very different than, oh, I speak on leadership and I speak to anybody. And I think the point you're making is there's a lot of CSPs that don't want to admit it that are struggling, as you can attest to from your conversations this summer at Influence. That and my bet would be those people are generalists. They specialize on a topic, which okay, that's correct, but beyond specializing on a topic, they're generalists. They meaning they know a little bit about 300 industries,
yeah,
which is not going to make them an authority in any one of those, as opposed to the person that specializes that stays tight in a few number of industries and know enough about it, have learned enough, have participated, have made contribution that that industry sees them as an authority. Maybe or maybe not a thought leader, but at least at minimum an authority.
And that makes their life easier. Like it just makes you if you know like I know if you're going to be a polymath and know a little bit about a lot of stuff, that's amazing. But that means you really have to do the additional research all the time to like really kind of bring yourself up to speed when you shift industries. But if you're an expert in let's stay with the construction or your distribution, you're an expert. You know that industry, and once you know that industry, you don't get the kind of like that feeling in the pit of your stomach where it's like, okay, now I got to customize my program for this industry I don't know anything about, and it's like, no, I know the industry. I can customize my program for this group because I know the industry, and it's easy.
And to that point, when you get to the point of being a thought leader in an industry, you now can ask questions that the industry hasn't yet asked because you're seeing patterns. You're looking at things differently. Somebody that comes in that speaks on leader, I'm just using leadership among a million other things, that comes into this. Yes, they can talk about leadership from a generic perspective, but they don't know enough about that industry, nor can they study it and in a ChatGPT search, in a couple interviews from board members. They can't study it and have the understanding level to ask the questions that the industry isn't yet asking, that when we come in as a speaker, we need to be doing. And that creates the authority. And so the gig chaser speaker, the generalist speaker, I'm an expert on leadership and I apply it to all industries. That's great. That's good. And they can do a good talk. They can do a good keynote. But what they can't do, no matter how hard they try, they they will not have the in-depth understanding to where they don't have the ability to ask the penetrating questions that need to be asked in a keynote presentation to move members of the industry from point A to point B. They can do a great talk and everybody can love their talk. And the old days in NSA, 3 points in a story, they can do that magnificently and they can have phenomenal stage presence and skills, but they're not a thought leader. They can't, they just don't have what it takes to be able to dig in enough to be able to see the patterns that people aren't seeing, to have to hear the conversations that people in the industry are having in the hallways.
So now
Because,
I,
go ahead.
I hear you. But now that we've berated everybody for 20 minutes, uh, about what they should be doing. Why do we do the big reveal of how they should be doing it? Like, how do I? Let's say I've chosen an industry. Let's just stay with construction. So I'm in construction. That's fine. Let's roll with that. How do I expand that out to diversify within construction? What would be my steps?
I mean, number one, does your website allude to the fact that you are an expert in construction and you have very specific solutions for people in construction? Okay, that's number one. Does your LinkedIn profile state the same? Do you have a LinkedIn newsletter that talks about the issues that the construction people are talking about and give answers that maybe have not yet figured out? Do you have, and if you want to use, whether it's Instagram, whether it's YouTube, you know, are you creating content that's specific to construction? And are you asking the questions and doing the current day answer engine optimization so AI finds you, because Google isn't looking for you anymore. AI is looking for you. And the things that they need to do speakers that just put stuff out generically about, I speak on leadership and construction. Okay, great. But it needs to go deeper. And I think that that every speaker that speaks on some aspect of construction, they'd be very, very smart to go into ChatGPT and ask, who are my competitors?
Uh,
What are their strategic advantage over me? What are my strategic advantage over them? Where are opportunities for me to shine? Duh. I mean, you can do market research in what, 45 seconds?
oh yeah.
And if you want to do an in-depth study, it'll take, 20 minutes. But the point is, if are we asking the right questions from the tools we have? I mean, let's face it, everybody's using AI. Why aren't we using it? If you're not using it, sure, maybe you want it to help you write an article, maybe not. But if you're not using it for research and to dig into and to understand the market, I just did for fun 45 minutes ago an AI competitive, and I'll just tell you what it was in myself. And um, I asked it, I said, create a competitive intelligence analysis for my speaking business. Tell me who the top three leading speakers that would compete in the same gigs as me. What have they done in the last 6 months to promote themselves, market themselves, so forth and so on. So chat came up with four people that I know
Yeah.
that I know are in my space on association membership, and and what each of their competitive um, advantage over me is. And I looked at it and I'm reading it. I'm going, yep, 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 yep. Most of this is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So I just happen to know already who competitors are, and not everybody does, because I've been in the nonprofit world for 20 years. I mean, working on there 26 years now. But the thing is anybody could do that same thing. And I know we've got a lot of ASSC AI tools
Let's
that
say
already do
we've
that.
got the speaker intelligence hub
Yeah,
that does that sort
but
of stuff. Yeah.
but I'm just saying, just anybody can just do a simple prompt, and I think we just have to learn, as you stated, what's your positioning, what industries, who are you competing against, and learning why might a meeting decision maker choose that person over you. And the other thing is that we didn't talk about, and I know we're running out of time. We've mentioned this numerous times. As an example, speaking at an association meeting is not the finish line; it's the starting point. And if you speak to um, let's just say associated general contractors, those are the big contractors that do very large buildings and that do a lot of roadways. And so this person that you were talking about earlier, his company or his competitor companies would probably belong to AGC. So, okay, so you look at AGC, that's not the finish line. That's the starting point, because AGC has all kinds of meetings. AGC has somewhere around 60, 70 chapters
Yeah.
around the US. And then all of the corporations that are members of AGC, as a speaker, we have access. So, I mean, just that could keep somebody busy for quite a while.
Yeah, well, obviously, so you're going in there and you've got all the chapters, and then not to even think about all the members like within those chapters who can hire you to come in and do the actual corporate stuff.
Exactly.
So it's like it's just wide open. So it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, look at AGC again, Associated General Contractors. So they have a meeting speaker budget. They have an education speaker budget for webinars, different budget. they have the chapters that are independent, but they're within the body. Many of those chapters hire keynote speakers for their annual meeting. And so yeah, it's think about if construction is your market, and let's say you get $500, $1,000 to do a webinar for AGC. Well, what are you really doing? You're doing an hour sales presentation to all the lead people of these big
They're
construction
all hiring.
companies that can bring you in.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of
But
sense.
but that's why I really try to push the idea, specialize deeply, diversify strategically. You
Love
know,
it.
be 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 on point on what you're doing.
All right, great. Ed, that was another fantastic week. We will be back next week with another in our summer speaker series or summer series for speakers, whatever way we're doing it. Before we wrap up, we should say if you like this content, you should really check out the ASSC, speakercommunity.org. We are a collection of speakers. We are not an agency. We are a collection of speakers, and our focus is on getting on to association stages. So if that's where you are in your business, you really want to go to speakercommunity.org and check us out. All right.
And before you close this up, I just we have a minute or two left on within our half hour. I would take that one step further. I really it was interesting. I was talking to one of the members of the ASSC a few days ago, and he said, "Oh, I just found out about association management companies." And it's like I said, well, you know something, we have a 30-minute video on association management companies in our vault at the ASSC. So I don't know where this person's been a member since almost the beginning. And so I would just say the interesting thing that we've done with the ASSC, we have approximately 80 interviews with decision makers,
People love that.
all association decision makers. We have a good
With their
30
contact information. We should say
with
that
their
with their
contact
with their
information.
contact information.
We have a good 30 videos talking about various aspects of the association world to help people understand how to access the starting gate. Again,
Yeah.
associations are not the finish line, they're the starting gate on how to access the starting gate. And I would just say that that people, we've said it a million times, join for a month, check us out. If you can go in there and get everything there is in a month and you quit, fine, God bless you. But there is so much. I know that we're a little bit guilty of allowing people to sit through a fire hydrant, but there is so much content that almost any question a speaker would have about accessing the association market, we have video workshops in the ASSC vault that answers every one of those questions.
Great sales job, Ed.
Thank you.
All right. We will see you next week, guys. Thanks very much for joining us this week.